You ready? Okay. Well, good morning. Today, we're making a couple of announcements as it relates to weather. I'd like to introduce the folks that are up at the podium with me. Of course, we have our GOSEP Director, Jacques Thibodeau. We have General Freeloop, who was just promoted to Major General. He received his second star today. He is the Adjutant General of National Guard. We have climatologist Jay Grimes with us. We have our State Police Superintendent, Robert Hodges. We also have the Chairman of the House Homeland Security, Jay Gallo, Representative Jay Gallo, and the Chairman of the Senate Homeland Security, Senator Caleb Klein. What we're doing today is announcing the introduction of a climatologist who's going to work directly for GOSEP. This was a priority that was identified during our transition team. You know, with Louisiana's unpredictable weather, as we see, weather experts reporting directly to GOSEP, we believe, are extremely important. So what has happened is GOSEP and LSU have entered into a partnership. The climatologist will be the governor's resident weather expert, and he will also help LSU teach young folks about meteorology as well. The state's climatologist, again, like I said, will actually be a GOSEP employee, ensuring that we have one concise voice when it comes to speaking about weather events in the state of Louisiana. He will also be a resource for all 64 state emergency managers. Louisiana's former climatologist was actually not a state employee under GOSEP. And of course, you know, when you're not working directly under GOSEP, you can have some disconnections. We want to make sure that our parishes, our industries, and our citizens are getting the proper information directly from the Governor's Office of Homeland Security as it relates to weather events. And so again, this is a new position under GOSEP, and it puts, I think, a stronger link in the communication change here. And so it is at this time that I would like to bring up our new state climatologist, Jay Grimes. He has more than 30 years of experience in the field of weather and climate, including 25 years in higher education at LSU and the University of Delaware. Probably not a lot of climate weather events in Delaware, Jay. So again, I'd like to bring up the board of Jay.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to thank Governor Landry and Director Thibodeau for giving me this opportunity to formally join GOSEP. Some of you may be aware that this will be the third administration that I've served as a UCG resource, but this will be the first administration in which I've been formally tagged to work with GOSEP. I also would like to thank Vice President Matt Lee from the LSU Ag Center, who has seen fit through the LSU administration to link in the state climatology position, which is housed at LSU, and the Louisiana Office of State Climatology to bridge the gap between weather and climate information between GOSEP and LSU. In fact, I think I see, Governor, that the LOSC, the Climate Office, the State Climatologist, and GOSEP now will begin an expanded relationship in terms of serving the weather and climate needs in Louisiana, not just for agriculture under the directorship of Vice President Lee, but for all aspects of Louisiana environment and economy. I'd also briefly like to send out a big shout out to my family at WAFB. Certainly, they have been a large part of my life, almost 30 years of television service here in the Baton Rouge area. That has indeed led to some of the opportunities that I've had with GOSEP and also with LSU. For some of you, you may be aware that I was the state climatologist before I joined LSU about 20 years ago. Now I'm back. So the advantage here for me, and I believe for the university, is the first step of an expanded role with GOSEP in terms of serving the citizens of Louisiana. And now I'd like to introduce Director Jacques, GOSEP's Director Jacques Thibodeau.
Wait a minute, wait.
Yeah.
I'm going to get my money's worth out of it. Why don't you address some of the tropics that we have in there real quick? I need to get put into work.
Tropics. What tropics? Oh, okay. Actually, in fact, this week, for the last several days, I've been prepping morning summaries for the governor and the GOSEP staff, already starting in part of the role that I'll take as a GOSEP climate and weather specialist. In terms of Beryl, which has everybody's attention, still a monster of a storm. It is going to certainly clobber Jamaica as it slides on by, and also will create more problems in the Caribbean, probably still as a hurricane when it hits the Yucatan. Beryl is going to get into the Gulf of Mexico, and I know that has a lot of people in Louisiana alerted. I want them to take the alarm and turn it off. This is not going to be a threat for Louisiana, but this is going to be a very active season. In fact, many of the experts say a hyperactive season. So don't use up your energy with this storm, which is almost certainly not going to affect Louisiana. This is a storm, though, to use as finalizing your preps for the rest of the hurricane season. This is kind of like Christmas shopping. No one wants to wait to the last 5 days of December to get out there. Get your preps done now, and they're finished for the season. So again, Beryl, not a threat to Louisiana the way it looks right now, but given the hyperactive forecast for the season, I would say it is very likely that between now and November, Louisiana will be impacted in some way by a named storm.
Thank you. I can take a deep breath now, right? First off, before I talk a little bit about the LSU partnership that we have, I just want to talk about what Jay brings to the table. For the last 7 days, we've been tracking the tropics. There were 3 stacked up. About 4 days ago, Jay said, I don't think we're going to have an issue in this realm, and we've watched it since. But what we did is we always have a plan at GOSEP. We took it as an opportunity to run through our practice. This morning, we did an internal conference call. We did a conference call with all 64 parish emergency preparedness directors and all state agencies, and we had a good opportunity to rehearse because we always have a plan. Jay brings that capability to us that gives us a coastal viewpoint of how we view weather events, and he gives us a real accurate portrayal of what we're facing. So now to the partnership real quick with LSU. When the governor presented it to us in the transition as an interview question, I thought it was a great idea, and we approached LSU. We've already got a long-standing partnership with LSU and the Stevenson Disaster Management Institute, and this was a logical progression where the office of the state climatologist is housed at LSU, and Jay Grimes now becomes a GOSEP employee. Vice President Matt Lee really came to the forefront and made it happen. It strengthens LSU, it strengthens GOSEP, and it puts resources of Jay Grimes. No offense to WAFB, but we need him a lot more than they do. So with that being said, I can tell you GOSEP's always prepared. Go to getgameplan.org for all tips on hurricane season. We're linked at the hip with the Louisiana State Police, Louisiana National Guard, and all of our partners. And I'd like to ask Major General Freelo, newly promoted General Freelo, to say a couple words about the National Guard and their response and preparation for hurricane season.
Yeah, thank you, Director Thibodeau. As we get into the prime part of hurricane season, the Louisiana National Guard is trained, ready, and equipped to respond to hurricanes that affect Louisiana. And we train throughout the year. In fact, last week we completed our final training event, which was the hurricane block drill that we did here in Baton Rouge. We had our disaster recovery exercise a few months ago, and we're always conducting our collective and training tasks to support the state. The key thing is, if we train for our federal mission and we train hard, that we will be able to execute our state mission and help the state of Louisiana. We have personnel and equipment strategically staged throughout the state. That includes over 6,000 service members that can deploy when needed, over 100 boats, 390 plus high water vehicles, and 21 helicopters. We also have commodities prepared to support the citizens. We're talking meals, water, and tarps, and those are staged to support as well. Over 1 million meals ready to eat, 1.2 liters of water, as well as 55,000 tarps. And if we do this, we'll be able to support whatever needs to be done for the state of Louisiana. The key thing is we continue to build readiness. We continue to focus on our federal mission, which will support us for our state mission, and we protect what matters. Thank you.
All right, well, there you have it. In closing, I think it's a couple of takeaways. Number one, the introduction of a state climatologist directly in GoStep only strengthens our ability to make Louisiana residents more prepared and giving them more information as quickly as possible when natural disasters threaten the state of Louisiana. In addition, I think just like Jay said, and as Jacques said, for the residents of Louisiana, continue to be vigilant. This gives you an opportunity to go through your hurricane preparedness list. You can go to getagameplan.org if you'd like to check your list against what we recommend. So again, you can go to getagameplan.org, and there you find all of the information necessary for hurricane preparation and also updated information on storms as they potentially threaten Louisiana. We're all going to keep the good Lord in our prayers and ask him to spare Louisiana this year. I would hope that these are all drills that we do. Again, as a former military soldier, you can never train enough. And the more training, the better prepared you are. And with that, I'll be happy to take any questions that the rest we have at this time. Yes, sir.
Governor, the LDH has stated on its website through its monitoring of dangerous heat events that climate change is part of the reason why they're tracking the continuing heat trends that we've seen. Can you talk about your understanding and what Mr. Grimes is understanding, how climate is playing into this position and why it's important to have somebody like Jay Grimes explaining to everyday folk what climate is doing when it comes to dangerous events like hurricanes and storms?
Absolutely. Look, I'm excited about having Jay on board because, you know, one thing about climatologists is they look at the climate over very long periods of time. I don't think anyone will deny that Earth's climate has consistently changed over the years. You know, right now we're experiencing a tremendous amount of maybe warming. We could be talking in many, many years about how we're all freezing. And so again, I think that it's important to have someone like Jay who can create a historical perspective and then tie that into the current events. Again, I think that is part of why we saw the need to have a climatologist as someone with Jay's experience in Louisiana. And again, you know, he's for the folks in the capital city, it's a very, very familiar face. For those around the rest of the state, they're going to be real familiar with Jay's face.
And can I also follow up? There's a lot of concern just because of the insurance rates and how quickly they've increased over the past several years. We don't necessarily need a hurricane to impact Louisiana directly in certain parts, but in the Gulf Coast, many people are worried that if there is a disaster that our insurance rates will increase. What's your level of concern about this hurricane season? Because as we're getting into a very active part of the season, we may get hit, maybe not directly in Louisiana, but in and around the Gulf Coast, which may increase the rates here that we see in Louisiana.
Well, look, I'm continuing to pray that God spares Louisiana this year from hurricane. I really am. We could use it, meaning being spared from a major storm. Anytime you have a major storm, it is going, and you have a lot of claims made that automatically affects our insurance premiums. I think that we've got two problems in the state of Louisiana. Don't forget that the federal government is not doing us any favors in FEMA's 2.0 of the flood program, which is causing rates on the flood insurance rates to rise. That's something that we filed suit on when I was Attorney General. General Muir is continuing that suit. That's an important suit, and we need Congress to respond to that as well. This year, we signed 26 pieces of tort reform and insurance reform during the session. We've got two legislators here that were very important, that played a very important role, as the rest of the legislature did, in trying to get control of our property insurance problems and other insurance problems that we have. So you bring up a great point. The fact of the matter is, if we're able to be spared from a major disaster, I think that the reforms that we put in place during the legislative session would have an opportunity to be put in place and create more competition in the market. Great question. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Governor, there's been some concern from faculty at Northwestern that the design for the next president has been.
We're only taking questions on topic, climate and weather and hurricanes.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, look, if you want to know, the question is who leads our universities? Let me explain something. And again, this is off topic. right? It's not what we hear. I appreciate you trying to stay on topic when you come here, okay, Mike? But to Jack's question, look, I think it's important that the people of the state of Louisiana are in control of their universities. It is their tax dollars that go to there. And so what we respond to the stakeholders in those areas as we look towards trying to take universities who are in trouble and taking them out of trouble. Any other questions on topic?
I have one off topic, though. May I ask you your reaction about NOPD and the city of New Orleans creating gun-free zones through the creation of a school in the 8th district around the French Quarter to limit the amount of concealed carry around?
Yeah, look, there's a couple of concerns I have, and I'm going to be speaking with the Attorney General and the District Attorney and the city leaders. Number one, I want to make sure that whatever we do in the city of New Orleans in that regards is lawful, meaning like we certainly don't want police officers believing that they're in a gun-free zone, acting on a suspect, using the gun-free zone laws to either make an arrest or to search that particular person, only to find out that maybe they're really not technically in a gun-free zone, right? That would destroy a criminal case. We don't want criminals getting off on technicalities. I understand and we've listened to the concerns of the folks from the city of New Orleans. I can tell you that Colonel Hodges is here with me today. Troop Nola is doing an unbelievable, fantastic job. Again, as we ramp that troop up, it's important for the residents of the city to understand that we're not at full strength yet. Troop Nola is not at 100% strength, but they're doing a tremendous amount of work. And so again, we're going to work to make sure that we're following the law. We understand their concerns, and we look to work with them on that.
We'll do one more question on topic.
Mr. Grimes, can we have Mr. Grimes in?
Sure, absolutely.
Mr. Grimes, coming off of the record heat last year, and now we're kind of in this pattern of we're seeing some consecutive days, at least in the New Orleans metro area, where we've had several days of excessive heat warnings. Talk to people about what your concern is when it comes to heat and our understanding of it as a public health threat. Because increasingly, I think in the past we thought of it as more of a nuisance, but now that we've seen these consecutive days and years that we've had these extreme heat events, what's your understanding and what can you tell people about what we should understand about heat?
Well, let's be clear, I'm not a public health specialist, but what we do know is that we're likely to see temperatures at or above normal for a good bit of this upcoming summer. Now, there's a combination of factors here. One is indeed the fact that we generally have more access to air conditioning during the day and nighttime hours. So people are less acclimated to that kind of heat when they step outside. So when we see these numbers of dropouts, people that respond negatively to that heat, some of that is simply because they're not being smart in their decisions about time spent outdoors, maintaining a cooling environment, getting themselves hydrated. But there's not a question, particularly in some of the urban environments, that those summers are getting hotter, and that is partly because the urban environment itself tends to retain heat. So folks just need to be a little bit more wise about this. And just like with tropical activity, there's a level of personal responsibility that has to be undertaken in terms of being ready for the heat and being ready for active weather.
And I should point out you have two meteorologists with Representative Dallaire up there. But can you talk to people about what we recently witnessed with how quickly Beryl went from a tropical depression in 2 days to a Category 4 storm? Like, what are you going to be advising the governor as we go through this hurricane season, knowing that we're probably in a pattern where you're going to see very intense and quickly intensifying hurricanes?
Well, if you think back the last couple of years, what is often called rapid intensification has become a common concern. And the truth is that in many cases, our computer modeling that drives the forecasting process doesn't have a good handle on that. So it is important that we be aware that that type of ramp up of tropical systems can happen at any time, anywhere. That includes the Gulf of Mexico. So it just simply requires that we be more alert to the potential for these tropical bombs, if you will, to explode into high intensity storms in a relatively short window of time. But GOSUP is on top of that in terms of their ability and their willingness to get prepared even before the storm is knocking at our front door. There's the response there. Now, let's think about these last a couple of decades. It has been the most active 20-year period in terms of tropical weather for Louisiana. In the last 20 years, we've had six seasons with multiple landfalls. So we need to take this seriously and again, not wait for that storm to be in our backyard before we respond to it. So in terms of the heat, people need to be extra careful and take time and take breaks as they could. And that's also important for employers to understand that those outdoor workers need to get adequate breaks from the heat and adequate hydration during the period of time that they're in the environment. In terms of the tropics, let's get started and let's get ready today so that when that storm likely does come, we don't have a last-minute rush for materials and resources to get families prepared. And I want to say it again, personal responsibility is a big part of being prepared, and awareness is a big part of being prepared.
This one,
Yeah, can you just talk a little bit about how these positional changes for the state climatologist, how was it working before? How is it gonna work now? What is all this
well,
shuffling around gonna practically do for you guys and for the public?
yeah, well, let me say this. I'll let either Jay or Jacques say, talk about how it worked in the past, but let me tell you one of the deficiencies that I saw. So that as we ramped up or we saw weather events affecting Louisiana, where we saw the tornadic activity that we had, we did some drills here because we're taking this seriously, right? And so we've done some rock drills very, very early on in administration. The first thing is I looked up and I said, Jacques, do we have a climatologist, a meteorologist who can sit by us and who can talk to us as we're looking at the weather? Because we have made so many great advances through technology, through satellite imagery, through the satellite we put up to better prepare us and better plan. And so having someone sitting inside of this building, working directly with Jacques on a more regular basis is a positive. And so I don't know how it worked before, but I'm telling you how it's going to work now.
Will he be based here or will he be at LSU?
Yes. Well, let me answer some questions. I've got 40 years in emergency management, 31 with the Louisiana National Guard, 28 with the U.S. Marshals, 5 with the city of Thibodeau, and now back in here with GOSEP. It's always been a weakness that we've never had the capability of having a state climatologist within GOSEP that could reach out to all those 64 parish offices of emergency preparedness and those 304 municipalities. Now, Jay's been in here in this building since 1992. He is a staple in the community with us. But more importantly than anything else, he will now become a resource that we can use to train and teach parish emergency preparedness directors. It was always a weakness that we've had. When the governor identified it, I was not going to miss the opportunity to improve that partnership. And sitting in the city of Thibodeau, my hometown, the last 5 years, I learned more there at the municipal level because it was just me. And that's what he brings to the table. In the past, that just wasn't there. It wasn't by design, it just evolved that way. So this is an evolution of emergency management. It's a new profession. We constantly look at it and we look at ways to make it better. And thank goodness with LSU and GOSEP coming together in a partnership, we're gonna be much stronger and give resources to the people that need it the most.
Will that office of climatology still be at LSU?
Yes, it will. It is considered to be a partnership. They maintain the Office of Climatology. Jay has dual responsibility with both LSU in a research and educational capability, as LSU's mission is, and then he's got an operational and functional mission, which is what GOSEP is.
So he's over here, but he's based here.
He's based here. We do it all the time. We have a very similar relationship with the Stevenson Disaster Management Institute, the Louisiana Business EOC at UL Lafayette. So this is not something that's new in the partnership. It's just new that now we have Jay as an element where we can have him at a press conference and give us an update.
Can I hit you with 2 more? How do you have any thoughts on how you're going to communicate? You know, we talk about rapid intensification of hurricanes. It's not only an issue for you guys getting resources out, but informing the public. I mean, even Katrina, people were like, yeah, not a big deal. All of a sudden, you gotta get out of Dodge. Is there any thought on how, or change with all this, or how you're gonna communicate this quickly, changing environment in a way that the public can recognize?
Sure, absolutely there is. So all rapid intensification does for an emergency manager is just compress your timeline, okay? So what we do is where we started planning before when a storm entered the Gulf and we had those 5 days, guess what we do now? When we see tropics off the coast of Africa, we begin tracking, as we've been tracking these systems for the past 7 days. So in order to avoid having a compressed timeline, we plan further out. So the rapid intensification for us, we know we're going to have a compressed timeline. So now we have to make decisions earlier, and we develop more information, maybe where we didn't care 7 days before or 12 days before. Now we do.
How would that affect something like
Yes, sir.
contract flow?
Well, let me just say this. I think that, again, your question highlights exactly why we're here today. Right? What having Jay on board does now is give us the ability to work when y'all, when it's not on y'all radar, no pun intended, right? What they have been doing, again, these last tropical waves, Jay and Jacques have been keeping me updated. And so we've been talking about this 2 weeks out, right? And watching it and watching the systems and looking at the tracks and reading the models and understanding what impact that has on the citizens of Louisiana. That gives us the ability to then push that information to folks like General Frieder, like Colonel Hodges, and other, and the 64 parishes, those that are asking those questions, especially the coastal parishes as well. So again, I think that your question highlights exactly why we're here today. We're here today because the safety of the citizens of this state are paramount to this administration and to the people that are standing up here right now. And so we're letting them know that just as we are encouraging them to prepare for hurricane season, as we're seeing activity in the tropics, we want them to know that we have been preparing as well. And so with that, we certainly do appreciate
Last
it.
question for Jock
That was the
Thibodeau.
last question.
And what?
Last question for Jock Thibodeau related to topic.
Okay, sure. This is the last one.
God forbid Hurricane Beryl makes landfall, but if it does, do you feel like the Salvation Army will supply more emergency preparedness vehicles since they already have maybe like 3 in the Baton Rouge area?
Well, first off, the volunteer organizations are an integral part of emergency management. They're involved in everything we do. Every volunteer organization, whether it be this one or the numerous ones, they come to all of our rehearsals. We actually have meetings directly with all the volunteer organizations. They are prepared. They understand what GOSEP strategy is, and they are integrated into our preparation and response efforts. Very much so. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you again. Any other questions, you can refer to Keith Kelly. We'll be more than happy to fill in any additional questions that you might have. Thank you so much.